Hi, welcome back to our video series on the Sportsman Boats. My name's Chris Frank, one of the owners of Spicer Marine Basin, along with my father Dan, mother Karen, and my wife Alta. We're here to answer a few questions for you, but really this time I want to take the time to talk about what makes a sportsman boat, and why you might want to choose Sportsman for your next center console. So to begin with, Sportsman Boats, they're an engineered-based company. What that means is they've got new hull designs. They've only been building boats since 2012, so their hull designs are built around the weight performance of a four-stroke motor. They're not using 20, 30-year-old hull designs. They're using new stuff that's adapted to new technology. They've taken the time to think out every little bit of the boat, whether it's the entry angle of the keel, the lifting strakes, and they've designed it to maximize performance. No boat does it all, but Sportsman has tried to balance speed with performance. This 23 we're sitting on with the 250 isn't a 55-mile-an-hour boat. It's not going to set speed records. If that's really important to you, Sportsman may not be the right brand for you. But if you want something that moves along with a dry ride, Sportsman's a good start with their hull.
Hey Chris, could you elaborate a little bit more about what the keel and the strakes are?
So there's a lot to a hull. You start with the bow. Sportsmen have a really sharp V. What that allows the boat to do is cut through rough water. Instead of pounding with a flat bottom, the V is able to cut through that rough water. As you look up from the bottom, it's got a nice flare, which will divert that water out to the side so that you get a drier ride. Boats that have kind of a straight line up through the hull aren't going to push that water out. What they call that flare is Carolina flare. Gives you a drier ride. As you move back through the hull, that V isn't as sharp. It starts to flatten out a little bit so that you're not drawing too much water. You can have a boat with a deep V throughout. That'll be the driest, cleanest ride, but it'll be slower. It won't get in the shallower water. You can have a flat bottom boat, which will get you in that shallow water. It'll perform well, but it won't be a dry ride. Sportsman's taken the time to get the most out of each so that you do get that speed, you do get that performance in shallow water, and you also get that dry ride. Their engineering goes beyond the hull. They've thought of everything before it goes into the boat. When you take a walk around a Sportsman, everything has a clean, neat, finished look to it. Whether that be the flat black glass with the flush mount GPS where no protruding edges are, the switches that are labeled underneath that, or if you go and look in the guts of the boat, as I like to call it, everything's finished, thought out. There are no inspection ports, no plates that you can unscrew and look in. Everything has a nice finished look, yet it's accessible for service. That's one of the big features of Sportsman. Thought goes into everything. The other side of that, and similarly related, is that there are a lot of standard features on a Sportsman. Everything from their 21-foot boats up to their 35s comes standard with a GPS. 9 inches on the 21s to 23s, 12 inches on their 24s, all the way up to their 17-inch, 18-inch, 22, 24-inch on the bigger boats. But it comes standard. When you're comparing Sportsman with other boats, you got to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, because when you go online, you're clicking through and seeing prices starting at this amount of dollars. You got to see what's on that boat. When Sportsman said prices starting at, you get a lot more from where you start, whether it be the Garmin, the JL audio that's standard on their boats. And that brings me into another bit. They've got their electronics equipment package, which they call SportLink. On every boat 21 and up, it's standard. That means you're getting a Garmin display, you're getting a JL audio sound system, which is one of the top brands in marine audio. You're getting those connected so that you can control your stereo from your GPS. Your engine's connected to your GPS so that if you have an alarm, it doesn't just give you a horn, it's telling you on the Garmin what's going on with it. Your fuel gauge is connected to that. On your 25-footers and up, you've got digital switching. It's all connected. It's really a step ahead of any of the other manufacturers out there. Yeah.
Chris, one of the things that some manufacturers, they still use wooden boats, don't they? And tell us a little bit about the manufacturing process and the fact that that Sportsman has no wood in the boat at all. It's all composite material.
Yeah, and this was something that I've just been so used to their composite material, I completely skipped over when we were talking about how they've designed everything. They've designed their boats no wood in it. Some manufacturers, believe it or not, in this day and age are still using wood. Sportsman uses all composites, so whether it's your transom where the engine's bolted through, where you need really 2 layers of material nearly 2 inches thick, Sportsman's using a composite material. What that means for you as an owner down the road is even if water finds its way into the transom, it's not compromising the strength and integrity of those materials. When water gets into a wood transom, we all know what happens. It absorbs that water. Over time, it weakens. I've seen it to the point where the wood just disintegrates and your motor's moving on there when it's not supposed to be. Sportsman uses what they call Kusa in the transom. They use all sorts of composites throughout the boat. Everywhere there's a cleat on the boat, it's backed by a non-wood product, so it gives it the extra strength. Another example, I can open this console right here and you've got a live well, insulated. Other companies will use engine insulation to keep that insulated around, so you see this metal foil looking stuff. Sportsman takes the time to build the insulation into the fiberglass, so even when you're in a compartment looking up, and you probably may not be there as an owner, but some are, you see a nice finished fiberglass look.
One of my frustrations working on other models of center consoles is that it's always really hard to get into the back of the boat if you've got to get to a bilge pump or a seawater pump, because you have to use what I call the one hand and one eye technique, or the 2 hands and no eyes technique, because you're going through a very small porthole. You can only see it. Tell us about the transom access in this boat.
So standard on every Sportsman boat is what they call a total access hatch. Whether it's one of their heritage models, their bay models, which are the masters, they provide access to your critical gear. And they make it easy to service, easy to work on. So if you're someone that takes it on yourself, you can get your whole upper body in there, you can work on it, you can be quick, efficient. You're not spending hours on end trying to change a bilge pump. What that means, more time on the water. If you're not the type to do it yourself and you got to take it into your dealership, if there's ever a problem down the road, you're not paying more in labor because it's hard to repair. So they offer their total access hatch, which gives you access to your pumps, your fuel filters, all of that stuff, and the added bonus, you get storage in it. That just ties back into what I talked about, where everything is thought out, everything is engineered in these boats. If I take another step back, going back to the standard features, where that benefits you as the customer is it adds value to your boat. When the time comes down the road to either sell the boat, trade the boat in, the higher starting price with more standard features gives you more value in your boat. If you're looking to trade your boat in and they're sitting at the dealership, they're looking up values, the Sportsman boats come back with a higher value because of those added standard features. It's got a higher starting price, which translates to more value later on as you keep the boat. Doesn't always mean the Sportsman's going to be more than the competitor, because by the time you add those options so you're comparing apples to apples, the prices are very close. But when the time comes to sell the boat, trade the boat in, you see that benefit from the added standard features and more value to the boat.
Chris, when we look at these boats and we see all this hardware, it looks really nice, but not all hardware is created the same, is it?
No, not all hardware is created the same. Sportsman has taken the time to research the partners they pair up with. Starting at the hardware, I'm pulling up this cleat here, or I'm going back to this door here. Sportsman takes the time, they've partnered with their hardware for Gemlux, which is one of the top performing hardware manufacturers in the country. They have hinges, latches, all of that stuff. One thing Sportsman does nicely is, you can see this here. I open this compartment, friction hinges. The hatch stays where it's supposed to be, where you leave it. You don't have to worry about opening that hatch, having it close unexpectedly on you while you're there. Your fingers are in it. Sportsman's chosen to use Gemlux hardware throughout the boat, which is, in my opinion, one of the best manufacturers of stuff out there, especially that type of hinge latch components. Going one step further, they've partnered with Garmin for their electronics. So you get your Garmin GPS, your Garmin radar, all of that's Garmin. JL Audio, Yeti, all of these companies, when you're getting these features on the boat, Sportsman's taken the time to research the companies, work with some of the best manufacturers out there. In terms of the electronics, because they're partners with those companies, you get 3 years of warranty instead of your standard 1 when you go buy something on your own. Because they're trained with the companies, they're installed properly, the companies add extra warranty on electronics, which 3 years is unheard of.
One of the things that I like about Garmin, Chris, is I call them man-friendly, which means you don't have to read the directions to use them. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's exactly as you say. They're very user-friendly. There are a lot of electronics manufacturers. They have their strong suits. One of the things I like about Garmin is they're user-friendly. Easy to navigate, get back to where you are. The way Sportsman runs all their gauges through the Garmin is it also gives you a fully customizable setup. You want a lot of information, it's there. You want something simpler, it's there. We take the time when we send each boat out to walk through that with each customer, because sometimes it can be overwhelming. But the more you get to use it, the more you realize it, and all of a sudden we get people that add a second screen because it's so easy, so simple to use.
One of the things that I've seen, there's a competing brand out here, which I won't mention, but they have a console door to go into the console that's in the front. And that seems like a nice idea, but I'd be concerned about that being a danger issue. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there are some brands have chosen where I'm sitting here to have this open as the console and access to the console. There are some benefits to it, I'll say that right away. You get a little bit more space in there, entry's a little bit easier. If that's important to you, that may be a big consideration. What I think of more when I see that is that's a heavy piece of fiberglass on a small hinge. That puts stress on it. Over time, that door's not closing right. But really what grabs me is that all of a sudden you have this big heavy door with not a lot of support, and you're in a boat that's moving. It doesn't take much for that door to get the momentum shifting to all of a sudden close when someone's over here standing with their hand in the wrong spot. To me, that's important. And for that reason, that's why I like the design and thought in Sportsman. It's just a nice simple door right there where someone my size, I can get in there, not a problem. Lastly, touching on the construction, Sportsman doesn't use foam in their hulls. There are benefits, there are disadvantages to foam. They use, as we said, all composite. Everything is chemically bonded together. Some companies will use foam because it gives it the added flotation. Sportsman doesn't use foam. One of the downsides of foam, it absorbs water, it absorbs weight. If you've got that water in there and it sits over the winter, it freezes, it expands. If you're looking to do some sort of modification, whether it's run a wire up the side, it's near impossible. Sportsman's chose to move away from that. No foam. It still has the flotation because of the stringers that you need, but it's a no foam boat, which means it's not going to hold water, not going to get heavy over time. Rolling into the safety side of Sportsman, every boat they make is NMMA certified. That's the National Marine Manufacturers Association. What that certification does for you as a customer, it gives you a little extra peace of mind. You see it in the capacity plates of the boats. This one we're sitting on here is rated for 12 people. I've seen other 23-foot boats rated for 9 people. Most of the time that's not a problem, but if you have the family, grandkids, kids visiting, you may want that extra capacity. But what that also says is the boat is built to the highest safety standards. That's set forth by the ABYC, American Boat and Yacht Council. They've got a manual about this thick of best practices for boat manufacturing. Sportsman follows each one to a T, and that gives them the certification to carry the NMMA certification. They've got a crew on staff that's always following those, so every bit of the boat is built to the highest safety practices, whether that's your fuel systems, your water inlets, your drains. It gives you that added assurance that everything is done to the highest tier level for safety purposes. You're not going to have any, fuel smells in the bilge, any of that other stuff from cutting corners. They take the time to follow the best practices for safety in building a boat. Thank you very much.